Welcome back to the Navigating the Healing Path podcast. I'm so excited. We have a guest, the first guest of the season. I've known this lovely woman for over 20 years. One of my early meetings as I started gallivanting around Hollywood, I've known her. She's a very creative and expressive and beautiful individual, Lacey Morris. Say hello.
Hello. I'm happy to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So we have invited you here because you are a therapist.
That I am.
Excellent. And this is our conversation, our episode all about various therapies. This season on Navigating the Healing Path, we're talking mostly about, all about coping tools, coping mechanisms, skills, communication, anything involving the healing journey and support and resources. So we have decided to talk about therapy because we both experienced different kinds, and we wanted to bring somebody who's in the field, who's has their finger on the pulse with all the new shit out there, right? And just, have another perspective brought in to expand ours. So thank you. I'm so excited. Let's get started.
Thank you.
And as usual, before we get started, we love to breathe. We're big fans of breath. And so we always invite everyone to connect with themselves and us through the breath. So I'm going to invite everyone who's listening along to take a nice, deep breath. Focusing on the expansion of your lungs. Release. Another nice deep breath. Anchoring ourselves into this present moment. Opening ourselves to receive messages and love and healing, whatever it is you're meant to receive. Okay. That always makes us feel really good. How you feel? You like breathing, Lacey? Are you a fan of breath work?
I love breathing.
Nice.
Yes. It's pretty great. Breath is powerful.
It is. Before we get into the conversation, would you do us a kindness and share a little bit about you?
Sure.
Like just a little bit of your journey, like how you got into it, the different things you've been studying, because we're going to pepper you with questions, I'm sure.
Okay.
But just say hello. Let us see you a little bit. What do you want to share with us?
Wow. Well, I was just thinking about this earlier today as I drove here. My earliest memories, I feel like, where I was trying to find attachment or connection, was actually this huge tree that was out in my backyard. So, like, ultimately, we all want, like, the love from our mother when we were really little, but my mother wasn't always very emotionally available. So I'd go out to this gorgeous tree and I'd climb, and it was like that was mother for me. And I was just like driving here kind of tearing up, like looking at all these trees and having this kind of euphoric memory of like how powerful that was as a child. I don't think we're all kind of gifted that when we're younger, but if we can kind of have these sources that are maybe more kind of mother-like or attachment figures, it's very healing. So I think that was like my very first memory of like, okay, maybe my mother is not the most available, but how do I find love and connection elsewhere? And so those were like memories of like trying to find that, or trying to find this like healing connection. And obviously as a child, I was very sensitive and I always wanted to help others. I thought I was going to be a nurse, and that was like, I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a veterinarian. And so I was always like this little helper. I didn't know that I was going to become a therapist. That didn't happen until very later on. A big part of my journey is my mother passed away in my early 20s. And I was like, who the hell am I in my early 20s after losing a mother? Because my mother was kind of a strong figure in our family. And so when she passed, I went on this sort of spiritual journey of like trying to understand who I was. Doing that, I started volunteering a lot at hospitals and giving back to particularly cancer patients because my mother had cancer. And so I was in hospitals and I'd go by the bedside and I had kind of these big crown boxes or paint boxes and like, how are you feeling? And that was like my very first introduction to like therapy using more art form. And I was just so struck by being with people in this like really vulnerable way and how honored I was to be able to share space with them. At the time, I didn't really understand what sort of therapeutic alliance was, but I was really like a lot, building an alliance with these individuals that were struggling or getting like chemotherapy and in hospice. So that was like my very kind of touch into the therapeutic world using art, and I knew that there was something to it, so I was very much interested in like I have to find a program that has the arts or the movement and like more creative expression because I was feeling like that was a gateway for me to connect with people and be able to help them share their story. So after that, I mean, this would probably take hours to tell you how I got to where I am. But after that, I did find a program, and I was very excited to find more of an expressive arts program where you got to become a licensed therapist in addition to being an expressive arts
Was that when
therapist.
you were doing the dance?
Yeah,
Was it that time?
I was doing a lot of like not well, my bachelor's degree was dance before that. So
Okay.
I
That's
did,
really cool.
yeah, and I taught acting and dance for like 6 or 7 years. So that was also part of my like creative journey. But then I kind of hit a wall and I was like, I want to help people like on a deeper level. I was teaching for a long time, but it wasn't enough for me. And so that was when I looked into more programs of like, there's something to these like creative healing arts. Like, I'm teaching acting, people are having breakthroughs, they're coming to me and telling me life stories, right? And so we know the power of acting and drama and theater, but like, I wanted to understand this, like the psyche and like what was really happening with these people that were coming to me with these deep stories and, crying or needing my support. So it was after that I kind of hit a wall at like 7 years of being at a talent agency, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go any higher up. I'm the lead instructor here, but there's nowhere else to go, and I also want to like learn more, and I want to be more independent. I want to be more creative with my work. So that was when I decided to get my degree. Short version of that.
How long ago was that? When did you start that?
Well, I think it was 2005 was when I started my master's degree. It took a while to get my hours.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
This was a master's degree in psychology.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
it's like an emphasis in expressive arts therapy.
That's a really
I love
rad
that.
emphasis.
It really is. I love the combination of things. And I love how your foyer into the healing arena was through art and dance. And then through that, because people would just naturally talk to you because you hold amazing space and you're a great listener, to have those other tools come in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to see you now learning and practicing all of it.
Yeah.
So how is it now? How is your practice at this point? What are you enjoying, or what is your special cocktail of different therapies that you like, or what's your new favorite therapy that you're into?
I think what I'm realizing lately, I just came from a teaching experience too. So I taught like 40 hours to all interns, and it was a lot of expressive arts. And it reminded me of like, oh, I'm teaching these people how to be therapists. So how the fuck am I doing it in my own practice? And what am I doing in my own practice? It like made me have to look at my own self because they're looking at me as like a mentor. So I realized each art form is like a gateway. And so if I can bring in movement or, poetry or, drawing, anything creative, then that's an entryway that helps me go deeper with clients. So I gave an example of we had a bunch of postcards actually, and they were like 100 postcards, gorgeous, different images, very abstract, and they had to choose two. So they chose one that was like their shadow self, and then one that was like more like, okay, this is my true self. But within 10 minutes, I learned so much about their shadow and their light, right? And I was like, oh my God, this would take like 10 therapy sessions. But like in 10
Minimum.
minutes, like I'm getting into like these deep core like areas of like what they're struggling with. So
it feels like a fast track to openness.
yeah, it's like this fast, deeper track to go deeper with people and understand like core issues within like a short period of time. And that's what I was realizing what the power of art is. It's like it takes us so deep. And then as a therapist, you can just say, okay, can you draw these two images or can we explore these themes? And within like 10 minutes, you're learning so much about someone or their childhood or their trauma that you're already there with them. Like it like kind of it like informs you, but it also takes you with them. It's like you're going on this journey with them through the art, right? So
I'm a big fan of efficiency. And so using these methods feels really efficient to
Yeah.
getting to the core, to, like you said, those themes
right.
that keep showing up that you want to bring some light and awareness around.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
love this combination. I'm a big fan of like mixed media in general, and you bring in the arts of healing, mix it up. I love that. I love that.
Mix it up.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. I've just recently this year started my CBT therapy journey,
Cool.
but I've had a life of art, and I feel like that was my therapy for a long time.
For
Yeah.
those of us that don't know, would you please explain what CBT is?
Oh,
Somebody?
yeah, I don't know. Do you want to? I'm sure you have
What
a
is
better grasp
CBT?
of it, of cognitive behavioral.
Therapy. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know the acronym, but
Yeah.
that does sound familiar now that you mention it. To cognitive behavioral therapy. Yes.
But from what I understand, that's more of just like, I don't want to say basic, but like
Thoughts and-
talk therapy.
Yeah.
Or is that a different thing?
CBT is very much like what are our thoughts? What are the thoughts that run us every day? And then how do we learn to observe? I mean, there's a lot of mindfulness in it too, but how do we learn to observe them and then say, can we choose different thoughts? So it's sort of like breaking up. It's very head based, so it's very evidence based. It's the insurance therapy where I could be like, yeah, I'm not just gonna write CBT even though I'm doing expressive arts therapy because they'll pay for it. It's very like everyone believes very strong in it, and I think it does. It's a great way of working with people, especially if people are like, I just want to like work on my thoughts and my negative limited beliefs, right?
which are very important.
Totally.
Very important.
Yeah.
Valuable work to do.
Yeah.
I guess I've never considered it as like the main mental
Yeah.
therapy, but you stating it that way, I can see like the spectrum of therapies unfolding and how there really is like a therapy for mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
So I guess would you classify the expressive art therapy, which are the blanket things that encompasses our dance, any form of like physical drawing, painting, or just like anything under the sun that someone's drawn to? Yeah, could you define some of the main things real quick?
So when you're trained as an expressive arts therapist, you have you're kind of jumping into different palettes. So like we took classes on drama therapy, on art, on music, all of them. We didn't go,
music, duh.
Yeah, music therapy.
How could I forget the music one?
We didn't like if I'm just becoming a trained music therapist, and that's a whole track, right? Like then you just get licensed in that. So we just kind of dabbled in each of them.
Okay.
But what I noticed is if I liked one more than the other, then I can study it further. But the beautiful part about being an expressive arts therapist is I can choose from all the different arts and then bring in those different kind of templates and tools, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. Okay, cool. But yeah, the expressive arts, it seems to be, I guess, I was going to say that's more of like the body piece to the different types of therapies. But, you know, especially getting into drawing or just like music expression, that I feel like that's more of like the soul piece to it. Is this an accurate theory for me to say that it's like
I don't
the
know.
different therapies for
I'm just
mind, body,
looking
spirit?
at it
Yeah.
because when I think of body therapy, one, you have like massage and different
Mhm.
energy work, but also what I really loved one time when you and I were working together was that dance therapy piece.
Mm-hmm.
I had so much fun that day
Yeah.
and I surprised myself. And it was really neat. And I really value the somatic work. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about like do you do much somatic movement or like can you describe or explain what that means?
Yeah, so somatic is like the big hip word lately.
Yeah.
There's like multiple trainings on it and so many therapists are getting trained in it. The root cause of somatic therapy was Peter Levine's work. So I don't know if you've heard of like his type of work. I'm blanking on the names of his books, but he's written numerous books on how we store emotions and trauma in our body, and he
Mhm.
created a whole school on like how to train people in somatic. So when we think of somatic therapy, it's really about like how we store emotions in our body, right? Or trauma or anything that's happened to us on an unconscious level. And so it all lives inside of us
Mhm.
in somewhere in our physical body. So what somatic therapy is like helping people heal. I say from the bottom down, CBT is more from like head up.
Mm.
So somatic is like we're working like what you said, like more mind body connection, because I think so many people are so disconnected from the fact that
Yeah, they're
there's
disembodied.
so much trauma and they're just like, oh, I'm fine. And then it's like, no, there's so much going on internally that you haven't even wanted to like look at or process. So it's helping people tap into feeling, senses, emotions physically. And then dance therapy is something I'm kind of additionally training in right now, where you do use more movement stuff. And when I say dance therapist, people are always like, "Oh, you have scars and you just want to run around." like
What?
Oh,
they think of it as
interesting.
like woo woo, and
No
you're just gonna dance with
way.
me. And I'm like, actually, it's like really deep
Yeah.
psychotherapy using body and movement.
Mm.
It's very somatic, but they call it.
Yeah.
It's like before somatic was dance therapy, and now it's somatic is very like hip, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
they're connected. They're very similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the CBT is the head, the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Somatic is the body. So then which therapy helps the spirit?
That's a good question. I mean,
I want to say all of them, just
Yeah.
off the top of my head,
Yeah.
because it all just makes room
Yeah.
for your soul
Totally.
in your body.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because it's all
It's all
healing.
connected.
Right? Well, yeah, exactly. And a lot of this is helping us to bring balance
Yeah.
to our physical system, our energy system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't feel like there's a wrong pathway through therapies.
Right.
How would you recommend to some Can I ask a question? Is that okay?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
please.
If somebody knows that they need help and they know that, doing it alone isn't working anymore, because that was me like a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend? How would somebody figure out how to find the right therapy for them? How does someone find a therapist or know which is a good place to start?
That's a good question. I mean, these days there's the biggest site is Psychology Today. So I always tell people to go and browse, and you can check out people's sites. You can read what they specialize in. You can even have like free consultations these days. So I think it's like shopping for the right therapist and then saying, let me narrow it down to like 3 and let me see if there's like areas that they focus in that I'm struggling in, right? Like if I don't know, maybe I'm codependent or I'm struggling in my relationships, then I would look for therapists that kind of specialize in these areas. And then I would probably set up a consultation and say, let me see if I'm a good fit, or let me see if
How
I
do you
feel safe
know
with
when
them.
you're in a good fit?
Mm.
Well, I think when you feel seen and validated and you feel safe with someone, you feel like people are, or a therapist is actually like understands you and sees you and gets what's going on with you. I think we were just talking about this in my college program, that it's funny, people always think that it's the intervention that you bring in that helps people heal, but it's actually rapport. So the biggest thing that helps someone heal any other stuff, trauma story, is that rapport you have from day one. So if someone feels safe and they feel seen, you could bring in any fucking intervention. You could bring in CBT. I could do art. I could do dance. And it doesn't really matter because they feel seen. They feel seen by you. And there's something about that connection where they trust you. They trust whatever you're going to bring in is going to heal them. So that's what I always remind people. It's not about like the specific intervention that's going to get you to this magic place. It's about this person that's sitting right in front of you that's like the safe haven and wants to say, hey, I got this flashlight and we're going to look at these things together. Like, we're a team. You're not by yourself anymore. And if it's scary, it's okay. We don't have to look at it anymore. But I'm the one shining the light on it and like showing you a little bit. And then every other day, maybe we'll look at it or we won't, right? It's like I'm guiding someone. I'm not doing it for them, but I'm like their partner in it. And that's like the beautiful part of therapy, is because you're helping them understand that. And they're safe with you. They feel seen. They feel validated. And I always say that's like the most important part of therapy. It's not what I'm bringing in the room. It's like someone from day one feels like, oh, like I feel like someone's seeing me on a soul or a spirit level. When you talked about how do we heal from the soul level, that's how we heal, right?
Connecting.
Yeah, that connection, or like them finally being seen. So, and that can happen in any other, I mean, it's not just therapy. It could be body work or energy work, or, right? It's like any other healing modality. People want to feel safe and
It is true.
feel seen, right?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Please.
No, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like the CBT therapy that I've been in, it definitely feels like just one piece of the overall puzzle. And I've been working, you know, with Nikki for the last few years, a lot of meditation, a lot of learning to hold space for myself to just feel and like actually tune back into my body. Because for most of my life, granted, I'm only hopefully about a quarter of the way through, I do very much feel like I've lived my life head up, like just a head running around, no connection to my body.
Floating head.
Yeah, essentially. So I guess with the therapies that you do, is there one, I mean, granted, I don't know, not that you could like diagnose me of like, oh,
Please,
what's
your
type of
assessment?
Yeah, but like for someone like myself who's only had experience with CBT but wants to grow more of a connection to my body, and I guess maybe to my nervous system specifically, just to grow that relationship and to get more in tune, what do you feel like you would
I feel like
prescribe? If that's the right word.
I feel like somatic therapy would help you understand that. Specifically, somatic therapy is about teaching people about their nervous system and like how to connect. Like when you were talking about your body and you even show me that image, like that's a lot of what we do in somatic. Is like, just even yesterday I had a woman put one hand here and one here on the belly, and it was like for half an hour we were just having a dialogue, like because she didn't even get what was going on with her body. Like she's very in her head and wants to be in control of everything, and I was like, no, let's go down. Let's like drop it down. And that's very somatic. It's like teaching people the skills to say, there's a story that lives in our body. What does it want to tell you? What does it want to tell you about what you've been through or your trauma or whatever is happening, right? And so we can go deeper into it. And the simplest exercise was like just having a dialogue with heart and belly. Like, what do they want to say to each other? What, and all of a sudden she was going into like childhood stuff or sexual trauma that had happened to her, and she started crying. And so she's connecting with parts of herself that are sort of numb or disconnected. But the minute we pay attention and we say, what do you want to tell me? Like, what's your story? Like, our body wants to tell us something, right? We just we're not in tune with it as much. So it's like, how do we connect? So that would be more somatic therapy, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And that can be anything from, like you just said, just having a conversation with your hands over your heart or your stomach, all the way down to, I don't know, is there like an opposite end of the spectrum in the range of somatic therapy?
You mean like a different tool or something else they would do with somatics?
I guess
or-
that's a better way to phrase it. Yeah, would dance therapy be more of like the opposite end of that? I
It's
guess, or
so dance is similar to somatics. Dance is a little more movement based at times. Somatic is more internal.
Oh, okay.
So dance is more like, I'm going to dance for 5 minutes. You're going to watch me and then you're going to repeat my dance. Or we're going to bring in themes. Like if you want to explore courage, maybe I show you what courage is in my body. So you could watch that and then you're going to like do it after me. It's like anchoring these new kind of themes for people, and sometimes as the dance therapist I have to bring that into the room, right? So somatic is less like theatrical and movement. It's more like what's going on internally and what's like nervous system stuff or trauma based or disconnection versus connection type of stuff. So I would say it's more of like an internal experience. Although I feel like dance can be internal if we're closing our eyes or we're moving or we're still going to have that connection, right? But I feel like they're a little different. They're slightly different, if that's helpful.
That is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a whole new world and realm for me.
Yeah.
So I just love hearing about all of this and to
Yeah.
know that, expressive arts therapy is something that is out there and is, it seems like there's growing research on it and like more people are exploring those things because it's such an important part of being a person.
Yeah.
And learning to connect to our bodies and to our own creative expression, like that in and of itself is so freaking healing. To connect again with our inner artist.
One really powerful, simple exercise that people get mad at me that I do so much, but it's really profound, is I'm like, let's have a simple piece of paper and draw a little image of a body. I joke that it's like a gingerbread man because most of the time we can't draw a body. So I'm like, it's our gingerbread man. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on in your body today? And this is your body. So they have to kind of like, if they're not grounded, they put certain images or like color to it. If they feel like they're cut off from their head, they're going to put that on there. And all of a sudden they're like, holy shit, I didn't even know I was disassociated or I wasn't grounded or my heart's broken or whatever it is. And they get to see that on an image.
Wow.
And so they get to take that home with them. And like, I'm like, okay, that's your work this week. And it's funny. It's so simple. It's something like kids would do or something, but it's
I
like,
love the simplest things. They make the most sense. The mind tries to complicate everything, but
Totally.
really all the answers are so simple.
Yeah.
From spiritual to personal, like everything is just
Simple little
simple. Simple
body.
is good.
Yeah. And I could do something like you're not safe in one image, but then let's draw another image of the body of what would be resources. How would you feel safe in this body? And it helps people start kind of like on a new neural pathways light up because you're like having them look at an image that is more like, especially if they've been through a lot of horrific trauma, they don't know what safe is in their body. So you have to actually have them look at this image and it freaks them out, but I'm like, no, but you drew it and this is like what safe is. And it's like, what would it look like? How would it feel? So it's like, that's a lot of somatics, is teaching people that we can create new neural pathways, right? That maybe never existed before, and that you can find safety again, even if you've had really like horrific trauma in your life and you don't feel like your body's safe, right? So that's a powerful exercise too.
That's awesome. I kind of almost just want to use that as like a part of my morning routine. Just like draw a little gingerbread woman of just like, what am I feeling today in my body, and just draw that.
Yep.
I like
See
that.
what colors come out and
Yeah.
different illustrations. Huh.
I like that.
That might be easier than morning pages sometimes.
I was actually going to ask. I was going to ask about journaling. What's your professional opinion about journaling?
I find journaling helpful. I think, especially when it comes to more thought stuff or CBT, DBT is something similar. It's dialectical behavioral therapy. but a woman created it, and she created it thinking like we need to feel more connected to our heart and our emotions.
Oh, I love that.
So CBT is very heady, but what she did was like, well, that thoughts matter, but how do we integrate it into heart?
I love her already.
So I like DBT a little bit better. I'm
Leave it to a woman to
a
bring the
little
heart into
biased
it.
on CBT therapy.
So how do they differ?
DBT
go
is
yeah.
very much mindfulness based. So with CBT, I don't know if do you get a lot of homework when you're in CBT?
My therapist has pointed
Blogs.
out that sometimes I have a hard time with the word homework. So we've kind of reframed it to an occasional challenge for
Okay.
myself, because there's
That's
I
good.
don't know, some part of me is just like, I can rise up to the challenge, but don't give me homework because I'm going to avoid it until the very last minute and it's not
Yeah.
actually going to be beneficial.
Okay.
There's that for you.
Because CBT has a lot of homework, thought records. Let's dump all these thoughts and track them. But the difference between DBT is we're bringing a lot more mindfulness in it. We're saying let's witness our thoughts more. We're not judging them. We're having self-compassion. It's a lot of self-compassion lens, right? So she brings in
Dude,
this
this
like,
is what I do.
yeah, she brings in the
Without knowing it.
self-compassion.
Literally, like most of our meditation sessions and the
Yeah.
processing afterwards
Uh-huh.
with you, Nikki, it felt like DBT.
Totally.
I'm hearing this explanation.
That's so fun. I should look into that.
Yeah, like everything is valid. There's no right or wrong. Like how do you love your thoughts? Like it's very kind of like
Oh, I love this.
almost like Buddhism. It's very Zen. Like
Yeah.
so.
I'm
I like
into
so
that.
when it comes to journaling, I think it's helpful to do dumps sometimes.
Uh-huh.
But I also have people reflect, like if they come to a more of a talk therapy session, I'll be like, just write out like what you noticed this week or some patterns or like I try to have the journal be more of an awareness tool than anything else, because if it's just
Yeah.
dumping, then I don't know if that's helpful. I mean, it is helpful for them, but not for the therapy process. I'm like, I kind of need to know like what's going on, so like you bring in like the patterns or the awareness and you can write that down in your journal, or like, oh, I did this again, or I got in a fight with my partner because of this. Like I need to know kind of what's happening consistently, but it also helps the person realize, oh, I'm stuck in a pattern a little bit, and it helps me write these down of how I'm getting stuck and how do I get out of it, type of thing, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I think journaling is helpful. Like when it comes to therapy, I think it can be more helpful though if it's intentional and like it's more
Like
of a
structured a little bit.
Yeah.
Or intentional. I like how you put that better. Intentional.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you could have your own journal and like I think it's amazing and healing, but if
Yeah.
you're like, I'm bringing this to therapy, then that's a whole other
Yeah.
like story with it, right?
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a therapist or just somebody who supports others in general,
Yeah.
sometimes in the beginning, do you find that you have to meet them where they are? Right? Like you have an idea, you have this intuition or this like I can see
Right.
it going this way, or I can see like based on what I know about you, you would benefit from this particular therapy or experience. But they're resistant because they have to unwind or they have to do some processing to open themselves to
Right.
get to that next stage.
Yeah. Well, I'm the type of therapist that meets them where they're at, and I'm curious about the journey that's gonna unfold. A lot of therapists don't do that. They go into this profession to have control, and they want control in the room, and they want to direct someone in the room.
Ew.
There are a lot
I
of
don't
therapists
like
out there
that.
like that.
It
And
doesn't feel good to
and some
me.
people want that, but that's not me. Like I didn't
Mm.
go into this profession to be like, I have to control people in my
I
room.
know what's
and I
best
have
for
power
you. Do
and, like-
this.
So it's interesting because some people aren't as comfortable with my approach. They want someone that's more very structured and like, here's my plan. This is what we're gonna do, A, B, and C, da da da, and then you'll be healed. And it's like you don't know that. Like you can come in with an intervention, But that may change or that may open up something else. So it's like I feel like you have to have that, like you have to bring a flow to
It sounds like you're more
therapy.
adaptive.
Yeah, more
You
adaptive.
adapt their what you call interventions, their experiences to meet them where they are, where they continue to walk towards.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That sounds much better. Because then that way it's not like Western medicine where it's like one pill fits all.
Exactly.
You know, like one therapy is good for normal general people, and we're all so different.
Mm-hmm.
From to aspirin, you know, affects different people differently, different amounts of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think therapy is much the same, and it's an individual, unique experience.
Yeah.
Tailored to you and what your needs are.
But people still come in and be like, fix me, or here I am.
Fix yourself.
Right?
Sorry,
you read my story, and now what are you going to do for me type of thing. I get that a lot. And I'm like, I read your story, and then I threw it in the fucking trash, because I'm not going to judge you based on that.
And your mind wrote
like,
that.
Like, you're something more. But people want to put themselves in this box of, like, this is what happened to me. How do you fix me? I mean, we live in that culture and, like, Western medicine of, like, this happened to me, fix me. It's not very holistic at times. Like,
yeah, not really taking personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I guess maybe for things and the healing journey. Yeah.
So one of the newer therapies that I have become aware of through just my healing profession the last few years is EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what that is?
I hope I can. So
to the best of your ability.
I've only done one level of EMDR. I'm comfortable in it right now. But basically what's happening is you're working with people's left side of their brain and their right side of their brain. And we store trauma in one side of the brain. And then on the other, it's very kind of rational and logical, if that makes sense. I don't know which one is which because I don't have the book in front of me.
Left is logical usually.
Probably. So basically what you're helping people do is when you do the eye, there's a lot of eye movement sensation. So you'll watch, like someone will tell a memory or a story. First, you always want to get them grounded and like in their safe place so you don't like activate people's trauma immediately. But you have them like kind of watch and you go back and forth with your eye, like with my hands or with like a little tool. And so their eyes are going to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. And this is accessing. This is helping them access the memory, but also on some level heal and unwind it from your brain. So that's what EMDR is. So if people have had pretty intense traumas and they like don't know how to like unwind them more emotionally and they're addicted to something, or they're like, okay, I can't get this trauma out of my head. It's always kind of activated. What EMDR is, it helps it become very less activated. So if you go into a memory of, I don't know, my dad left me when I was 5 and I like remember when he walked out the door and that's like such a painful memory, the goal is to get it down to like 2 or a 1 versus like a 10 where it's super activated. So you keep doing these eye movements. You might bring them back into that memory at times and say, okay, where are you at now on a scale? You do a lot of scaling on a scale from 1 to 10. Where are you? And you're kind of just like tracking what's going on. Mm-hmm. And there's brain spotting now, which is very popular, which is similar to EMDR. And it's the same thing. You're just using like this kind of bilateral movement and you're helping people. I don't know exactly how it heals, but it does. It's a powerful
What I liked
method.
Hearing about it, that what really drew me to my curiosity is because trauma is always in the present.
Yeah.
Flashbacks, all of that can happen at any time.
Sure.
So it's now.
Yeah.
The brain tells the body it's happening now. You're responding as if it's happening right now. When you do the eye movements and you're doing this process, it's rewriting the brain and putting it into the memory bank opposed to the present moment.
Exactly.
Which I find fascinating about the brain.
Yeah.
I think that's so neat, and how the eyes are involved and is using the nervous system to help process this really difficult situation that you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just fascinated. I love the human body. It really is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So keep learning, man. I can't wait to hear more about, you talking about this and stuff. I love that. So I love the brain.
Yeah, I like all that stuff too.
It's really fascinating to hear about. I'm just like, God, there's so many possibilities and different like flavors and paths of healing that are out there. And now I'm just really excited. Like, who knows where I'm going to be in 5 years and what type of therapy will best serve me then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so cool to see the charcuterie board of therapy and just like different healing strategies and possibilities that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I like looking at therapy now, not as because there was a big stigma. If you were in therapy, you had a psychiatrist, all of this, there was like judgment, like there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the different therapies and just this whole process is a way of connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Connecting to you, connecting to your past, to the identity that you've established, to
Right.
also then letting it go and connecting to a new one that serves you better than this
Yeah.
old garbage one that you were raised with that doesn't serve or feel good at all.
Yeah.
Like therapy is just a way to create space within you to feel good. And there's so many pathways to
Yeah.
feeling good. And I do feel like a lot of it benefits from the multi-pronged approach. When somebody has cancer or they're going through something like life threatening, it's not just one facilitator or practitioner. There's
Right.
a whole team of people
Mm-hmm.
addressing all the different levels and layers to the body, the mind, and the spirit. And I like this holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we as a country and a world in general would really benefit from this integration of different healing modalities.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Based off of that, Lacey, with your clientele and the experience that you've had across your entire therapy journey and teaching journey, what do you feel like is like one or maybe several types of therapies that you feel like we as a collective here in the United States are in drastic need of right now?
Something that came to me today that was a good reminder is I had a new client. She was very clear on her patterns. She said she grew up with a narcissistic mother, and the mother's sick recently. She's 90, and she's been caretaking for her. And she said, every time I go over there, I go back into an 8-year-old version of me. I'm reminded of the trauma and what she did to me. Help. How do I not go into that pattern? And she was very like, I need a tool right now type of thing. And I was like, okay, what would I do with this woman? Like when someone calls you in that moment and knows her shit, she's been in therapy for many, many years. She's not new to therapy. And it was interesting because I immediately went into, timeline therapy, which is hypnosis. And we haven't really talked about that yet.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
I've done it with
I
you.
had such a good one the last time. That was so good.
But I actually was trained in timeline therapy at an NLP workshop. And NLP is very Tony Robbins, so it's
neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, neuro-linguistic programming. And they said, we want to talk about timeline therapy. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't even a therapist yet. But they did it on me, and I was like, holy shit, whatever just happened was so transformative. And basically what it is you're helping people go back to a memory of their past, and you're kind of taking them on a timeline. They almost have to leave their body and float above. And then you're like, you ask a question, you're very specific, and you're working with the unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask it a couple different times, and then you go back and you visit an 8-year-old version or a 9-year-old version. And so when she asked me today, what would you do with me? And what would be the quickest way in, right? She doesn't want to come to me and talk about how fucked up her mother is anymore. She's like, I get it. I know who my mother is. I know what happened. I'm 52 years old. Like, help me. And I was like, oh, I forget about that powerful tool that I've used with people. And they tell me after just one session or 2 sessions, they're like, I've healed my trauma, or I let go of this habit. Like, so when you ask what would the world need, I feel like that would be a really powerful tool that I feel like people can understand and relate to on some level. And most people, when you say, do you want to do hypnosis, they're like, cool, that sounds fun. What is that? And they're open to it.
Mhm.
If I said, let's do dance therapy
They
or let's
get all
do art,
shy.
they may not be as open. A lot of
Mhm.
adults, particularly, are not very open to creative expression. So, like,
Aw,
I feel like
that's unfortunate.
hypnosis is like a gateway in too for people that are like, I've heard of hypnosis. That's interesting. Why don't we try that? Especially people that are more heady, but they want like a quick fix. So when you asked that question, and then I had that experience this morning, I was like, oh, she's coming to me and wants something instantly. And I took it as she's pretty well versed in like her trauma. She's not just coming and wants
She has
like,
a lot of self-awareness
yeah,
around
she's
it
very
already.
self-aware. She wants something a little quicker because she's been in therapy for like 30 plus years. And you're like, wow, apparently it hasn't been helping. So what do we do to help
That's
you?
why I don't really care too much for talk therapy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love talking. I love listening. I love asking questions.
Yeah.
But I feel like that can only get you so far before you're just a hamster on a wheel.
Right.
And a lot of the talk therapists, or I forget what they were called. Cranius, no. Process. It was an old term anyway.
My shrink.
Psychoanalysts or something like
Yeah,
that.
psychoanalyst.
I think that was one of them. But they just keep re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
They just keep rehashing it instead of
Yeah, you don't get
reducing
anywhere.
the emotional attachment to it.
Mhm.
There's
so-
no body, like anything related to the body in
No,
that
there's
type
no
of
integration. There's
therapy?
no physical
Integration,
release.
thank
There's
you.
no, it's all, like you said, like in
You
the
just
head.
talk about it.
Right. And that to me, you can only talk so much before you got to go do
analyze
something
your
else.
pain for like years.
Yeah. Good job. Can you choose something else now?
And eventually you might get somewhere, but it would take a lot longer. Like,
It feels
yeah.
like the long
It's
way.
the long path for people.
I
Yeah.
like that idea too. The creative expression, those artistic therapies are kind of like a fast track, an accelerant, because you're incorporating the multiple aspects of you, not just
Right.
the head.
Mm.
So you're involving the whole the whole system. The whole system is participating and then bringing you awareness into it.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like the expressive art therapies, or like maybe, yeah, anything that incorporates the whole system and spirit? So I guess music, dance probably would as well.
Art.
Yeah, any multimedia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like those accelerate the integration and healing process because it's using each different system? Or like with drawing specifically, I feel like that is actively bringing something out of the unconscious. It's getting it out, like it's processing and awareness and like integrating like all in one. So do you feel like that is kind of is that accurate actually what I just said?
I feel like it's multimodal because I could have someone draw an emotion, but then you can give them a homework assignment, or you can say, from based on this picture, what are you understanding? And then you could create kind of a mental component to it too. You could have it be a creative expression, but then how do you take it home and have an action, right? So I think sometimes I bring more action-based stuff for people that are like, oh, what do I do with this now? Like, that was cool. I just drew my feelings, or I drew this image, or my little gingerbread guy. Like, but then I'm like, what do you go home with? How do you like start tracking things or have like action steps to move forward? Because that's a big part of it too. Like, I think it is a fast track in, but a lot of us in this culture want to know like what happens after. We want to understand things. We want to like conceptualize things, right? So yeah, how do you bridge those two is important just as well.
Yeah.
So
it seems like we have a very I guess more masculine and intellectual way of going about healing in this current day and age, and I feel like that's changing.
Yeah.
For the listeners, which is everyone, because we don't do video. Nikki is making a hilarious face.
I love psychology and I love modern science. I mean, with the patriarchy gatekeeping all the things, like they keep it to, oh
I
man.
know.
I love that more women and more heart-based men are doing things differently.
Mhm.
That they're focusing on the heart and feelings and honoring that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just logic and think your way well. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Women, we know that. When we are there to
Some.
support, okay, facts. Facts. Not
Not all
not
women.
all women. I know I don't like speaking in absolutes anyway. But generally, a lot of women, the caretakers, though we know how to be with somebody, to listen, to offer,
Mm-hmm.
grace and love and space and validation, And unfortunately, I don't want to use that word either, but from what I've observed and what a lot of people have been talking about is psychology, for the most part, since its awareness and development, or as a science, has been mainly in understanding and diagnosing what's wrong.
Right.
And which is why I love the positive psychology came like some decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
that focuses on, well, what do happy people do?
Right.
How do they process? How do they look at the world? And they started to study happy people,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning how to bridge that gap and offer solution of, like, these are the possibilities. This is what these people do. This is how they cope, they manage, how they perceive life, how they process it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is offered by the family, and this is why
Right.
a lot of the generational cycles are becoming more and more aware, and prevalent is also a big buzzword too, but it's some real work.
Yeah.
Even our DNA, from what I understand, trauma corrupts DNA. It actually changes you.
Mhm.
Changes your brain waves. It changes your body
Yep.
chemistry. So the more that you heal, you're actually also healing yourself on a cellular level, which I love, because I love tuning into the energy system. So I'm like, oh, let me just give that some resource,
Mm-hmm.
to really help you shift.
Yeah.
So I love that there's more and more compassion and openness and awareness that everybody needs healing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just how society is. There's nothing wrong with society, people. Not necessarily you, or just how historically we as humans have treated each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot of emotional healing to do so that we can show up different. So I love all these different avenues and paths of healing through all these different therapies. What's your favorite? You knew I was going to ask that, right? Did you hear it coming or something?
No.
Okay, wait, actually, can I?
Yeah.
I have a very similar question,
Okay.
but I'm just going to like tag it on to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's basically that question, but what's your favorite to elicit, I guess, and what's your favorite to give and what's your favorite to receive?
Nice.
Well, let me start with where I was just taking. I was taken somewhere.
Okay.
So this woman that was very wanting control, this just happened yesterday when she dropped into softness. I was like, oh, I want to bring this up, and I'm just going to bring it up. So I said to her, do you think that as a soul, we choose our family, we choose everything that we come into to become who we are? And this is kind of a ballsy question for her because her father molested her whole life. She has like a horrific background of like some rough shit, and she said yes. And it fucking opened up this whole spiritual talk about like, I chose my father because this is what I need to learn, and now I'm traveling the world and I found my passion out of my biggest pain. I transformed into my biggest gift. And that's like what I get excited about. And a lot of people get really mad at me when I do this. And I do it with cancer patients. I'll be like, cancer's a gift. Like, how is it? Like, what is it here to teach you? And they'll be like, fuck you. And I'm like, but wait a minute, let's go deeper. And when we go deeper, they're like, oh my God, I've had all this resentment because my husband left me. And there it is in my breast. And this is why I have breast cancer. And we'll go to like these deeper levels of like our body trying to show us something in like dis-ease. And I think that that's when I get the most excited, because I'm like, like I feel like there's this magic to like can we not look at our lives as like victimizations? Like, these things happen to us and I'm so angry and da da da. Like, we carry our stories in certain ways. But if we look at them as a gift and say, you know what, my father was this way, and yes, he was an asshole, but like, how did I learn from him? And how do I look at this person as a teacher? Like, what were they here to try to teach me? And when I can do that in sessions, it's so profound. And people are like, oh my God, this is why this happened to me. And so when you ask, like, what I get excited about or how I would, like, what's my way of, like, going in with people, when she did that, all of a sudden we were in such deep territory of, like, of understanding her trauma, like, on a totally different level, because people think, like, these things happen to me and I'm damaged, or like, I just think we have this society way of looking at, like, trauma. And what if we looked at it on, like, a bigger level, on, like, a soul level? What were you here to come, like, what were you here to experience in this
And
lifetime, right?
learn,
Like,
what are your lessons?
what are your lessons?
Amen.
Yeah.
And that's such a spiritual.
It is. It's part of that spiritual umbrella of just looking at that. Because I love that shift of
Yeah.
perspective. This it's also one of my favorite things as well, to
Right.
even like ask myself.
Yeah.
Because growing up with like a somewhat narcissistic, emotionally unavailable, and immature father,
Yeah.
I realized, because I had to ask myself, like, well, what am I learning here? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because he wasn't who I wanted, but I realized he's who I needed, because I came here with the intention, apparently, of learning how to hold healthy boundaries
Right.
and how to choose me
Yeah.
and to honor my joy and happiness and not sacrifice for
Mm-hmm.
someone else's comfort.
How
Yep.
to heal from codependence.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm like, thank you. I'm sorry I can't talk to you because you
Yeah.
don't respect me.
Right.
But
He was
thank
teaching
you.
something. Yeah.
Ultimately, like,
Yeah.
that is the lesson. And as soon as you learn that lesson, you don't actually have to repeat it anymore.
No, that's the power of,
Right?
like, realizing
I
these
love
things.
that. It's like, oh, I'm done. I learned it. Moving on. Shifted.
Yeah. So I think that I was, yeah. You come in a certain way and you want control, and then you see someone, like, drop into this beautiful, soulful place, and I was just like, here we are. Like, I've been waiting for this
I
moment.
relate to that so much. That's also one of my favorite things about what I do,
Yeah.
is just I get to witness
Totally.
healing
It's beautiful.
and opening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
would you consider energy work the spiritual therapy? Actually, now that we think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, because
Okay.
spirit works through me, and
Yeah.
that's just sort of their realm, right?
Mhm.
The energetics, the quantum,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, that's probably the level I love going deep, though. Like, you have to really want to work with me. You have to, like, want to see and look and be
Yeah.
willing to connect and plumb those depths and,
Mhm.
practice releasing. But really, I just like helping people connect to their own inner healer,
Yeah.
offering tools and perspective and questions. But yeah.
Yeah, receiving body work and energy work from you, Nikki, has definitely been, that feels like a nice big piece to my puzzle of just like
Mhm.
healing and everything. But I do also still want to hear the second half of your answer of what's your favorite therapy,
To receive.
and it doesn't have to be overall. If it's maybe something right now
Me
that
to
you feel
receive?
like, yeah,
Yeah, like, or
Yeah.
what's helped you the most over your years, or yeah, what is your favorite to receive?
Honestly, my biggest teacher has been nature.
Mm.
I think nature has so much to teach us. And if we're quiet enough and we listen, or we spend time in solitude, or we're with nature, sometimes I'm driving and I'm so struck by how like held I am by nature, and I can just look at a tree and feel it, or this, like, and it on some level it makes me sad, because I feel like we live in a culture that's so disconnected,
We're out of
and
balance.
we take and
Mhm.
take, and like, we're not honoring of the earth, right? But when I think of my journey and how I've healed a lot of like my trauma, it has been from like spending time in the desert or in the forest or being on like a vision quest or like being led by more of like a shaman journey where I'm going into kind of indigenous ways of healing.
Right. Or going into your childhood backyard's
Yeah,
tree.
or being in my backyard, and like I just feel like there's, even when my mom passed away, I remember just going up in the mountains and I would bring a drum and I would just sing. Like I'd scream, I'd cry. I don't know who was listening. Someone was listening though. It was like no one could understand my pain at the time. And like that was the only way I could express it, was through nature. I felt like something was listening to me, right? In those moments. And I was held. Like I'd cry and then I'd kind of lean back into a tree or feel like the tree was kind of like holding me in a way. And it sounds strange to say that, but like I feel like that those have been my biggest ways of like trusting and like relying. I don't think everyone can feel that, and that's okay. Maybe it's people for them or healers or you know. But for me, it's like when I can drop in, I'm in such awe and beauty of like how magical like nature is and how supported we
So
are.
nature therapy.
Yeah, like ecotherapy, like just being out
Bring
on
in
the
that
land or bringing in,
sunshine.
yeah,
I also think that's also very telling of your nature as well, because you are incredibly earthy. Like, this makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Knowing you the way that I do, I'm like, yeah, this tracks. So I love that you have that connection, and I have been working and building that myself.
yeah.
So it's always very inspiring to hear them. Like, I'm gonna go to the beach. I'm gonna go take a little walk in Temescal Canyon.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been very called to getting back out and really rebuilding my connection with nature, because the industrial, concrete, and technological world that we live in, our bodies aren't meant to exist in this
No.
space, and
Not meant to wear rubber shoes.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a joke and like a meme out there or whatever, but the go touch grass thing, have you guys heard
Hug a
that?
tree.
Totally.
But like literally go touch grass.
Go touch some
because
fucking grass.
our bodies,
We need
like
the connection.
It
like
takes the
chemically
negative.
and it's like electric, right?
Yeah, it
Like
takes the negative
physically-
ions and it replaces it with positive ions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what my grounding mat here does, but
Yeah.
artificially
right.
through the outlet.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, there's real
There's
science
real
in that.
to
Real
healing
science in
in
healing
nature.
and yes. And I think that would be helpful. And then this is why there's a lot of those outdoor retreats.
Yep.
Because you get into nature, you get talking, you dancing, you're drumming, you're creative, you're incorporating all these different layers of awareness and healing and energy and resource. They're amazing. I can't wait to go to and help facilitate other healing retreats. Like it really calls to me. So much profound work can be done when you focus and you're in a really safe environment with conscious,
Totally.
respectful leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Therapy. Highly recommend.
Highly recommend. There's a whole charcuterie board of options waiting for everyone to go explore in therapy.
Pack your plate with whatever entices you, and then but be willing to risk something, to be adventurous and do something a little bit that scares you, because there's usually some real money like on the other side of that. There's a real big payout when you just push yourself a little bit into that edge of discomfort. Healing is uncomfortable. You break your arm, ow, it has to be stabilized. Don't fucking touch me while I heal. And it hurts, it aches, and then it starts to itch. Like it's really annoying and it's very inconvenient oftentimes, but really worth it. You get a whole life. You get a new life.
Yep.
New possibilities, new reality. If you can get to that emotional frequency of courage, out of fear, out of shame and judgment and guilt, and up to courage where you're like, I'm willing to look. I'm not going to like it, It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to suck. But I have a community. I have a support system. And then you just go up from there,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. Well said. I absolutely love the conversation that has unfolded today.
Thank you,
And
Lacey, for being
Thank
here.
you.
yeah, thank you so much for your expertise, your thoughts, your time.
Of course.
It's been such a joy. Is there anything that, like any social media?
Yes, and before that, when you talked about courage, there was this tiny book by Osho that
Oh.
changed my life, and it's
Mm.
called Courage. So if you want
Aw.
to pick that book up, that was very transformational for me.
Noted.
Yes.
I'm going to add that to my list. I do love Osho.
Yeah, you can find me online, my name, so www.laceymorris.com. I have free consultations, my phone number's on there, my email, also kind of what I do at groups or how I work with individuals, so there's a lot of information on me on my website.
We'll put your we'll put your website in the description.
Thank you.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
sure. And tag you. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And for those that are interested in tuning in next week, Nikki and I will be talking about big, scary, toxic, unhealthy relationship dynamics.
I want to be
And
vulnerable. No, it's totally fine. We're going to be vulnerable. We're going to talk about shit.
we are, as we always do.
Every week.
Yes. But talking more about the coping mechanisms and the little
Yeah.
nuggets of wisdom that we've learned along the way to help us heal from those dynamics
And hold boundaries.
and hold boundaries.
Indeed.
Yes. So until next time, you can find us on Patreon if you're interested in more content from us. But we hope you have a fabulous week.
Indeed. Blessings.